Welcome to Stitchery Stories, where textile artists share their life in fabric and thread, inspiration, techniques, disasters and delights. And I'm Susan Weeks, enthusiastic embroiderer and textile arts dabbler who also loves podcasting. So take a break and enjoy our light-hearted chat, and please share with your friends so they can enjoy it too. Hiya, do you teach in-person art and craft classes and workshops, or do you know someone who does? I'm Susan Weeks, and you know me as the host of this podcast. However, in my business, I am the Crafty Course Profit Booster. And I teach creative people how to create profitable online on-demand versions of their popular in-person art and craft classes. Yes, even if they are worried by the techie stuff. So if you would love more profit and less stress from teaching what you love, then I am creating a range of unique resources and courses for you. Visit the info page on the stitcherystories.com website for more details as they develop. And now, let's welcome today's fabulous guest. Hello and welcome today to our lovely guest, Lottie Cockell. Hi, Lottie.
Hi, Sue.
Brilliant to speak to you today, Lottie. And lots and lots of things to talk about with Lottie today. And I've, again, somebody else who I've been following along on Instagram. And do you know what? I'm really pleased that I found Lottie, because I know that we're going to have a brilliant chat today as well, because she's got a really interesting story for us, definitely.
I hope so.
Yeah, for sure. Right, here's a quick bio here for Lottie. Lottie is a fibre artist and designer based in Warwickshire in the UK. Her work covers a range of styles and techniques, including thread painting, blackwork, cross-stitch and, more recently, even crochet. She started Purple Rose Embroidery in 2018 at just 19 years old, fresh out of sixth form, and since then has created almost 100, good grief, has created almost 100 different kits, digital patterns and tutorials to share her love of crafting with others. That is prolific and awesome, Lottie, I'll just say that now.
I've been very busy.
Yeah, you have indeed. Inspiring others to try something new and experience the therapeutic nature of stitching has been an incredibly rewarding experience that she looks forward to continuing for many years to come. And as usual, I've got Lottie's links will all be in her episode on stitcherystories.com. But you're certainly busy on Instagram, aren't you, Lottie? And you've got your website and like a links site as well for everybody.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm busy everywhere.
Yeah, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Pinterest and Facebook, according to your list here.
Yeah.
So. Fantastic. And of course, on Lottie's episode on stitcherystories.com, then there's a gallery of images there that she's provided me, and we'll be talking about some of these items as well, no doubt. And of course, you know, Instagram, all of those places she shares her work too as well. So brilliant. Right, Lottie, let's crack on. So before we kind of get dived into your story, do you want to tell us about what you're working on and what's got you excited at the minute, Lottie?
So I'm working on a new collection, which is called the Tartan Peony Collection. About 6 months ago, I started working in a different way, where I was designing one design, as it were, but in 3 different techniques for subscription boxes that I'm doing. So cross-stitch, blackwork and embroidery. And the summer boxes are going to include the Tartan Peony collection. So that is what I'm working on at the moment in those 3 different mediums.
Right, yeah. And I mean, that's something I want to dive into a bit later on when we're talking about techniques and things, is I spotted, he's called Eric. He's a turtle, isn't he? It's a random name for a turtle. I'm sure there's a story behind that. But I'd spotted Eric in blackwork, I think it was. And then I realised, then you shared an image that Eric was available in embroidery and cross-stitch, I think you said as well. So, yeah.
Eric was in the spring boxes, and he's a turtle that the Instagram, lovely people at Instagram named for me. So he is the featured collection at the moment.
Right. And so what we will do then is I also want to dive into this, the way in which you're organising your work into things like collections, and you're doing boxes, and wow, really busy. So here we are at the end of March, and you're planning. So is this what frequency are the boxes that you're doing, Lottie?
So they're quarterly boxes. So they're seasonal. Winter, spring, the next one's going to be summer, and then autumn, and the changeover is slightly offset so that people can stitch Christmas designs before Christmas.
Right.
So the winter box starts a bit earlier than you might expect. That spring starts earlier than you think, but it works. So summer will be in May.
No, but that's a valid point though, isn't it? Because I quite often post around kind of end of November, December, how's the Christmas crafting going on? I've got a load of silly photos about that. And because I always think to myself, well, I might get around. Well, I say to myself, I might get around to doing something. I know I never will, So, but some of these things can take ages, can't they? So, you need to really be starting your Christmas crafting in summer, really, I suppose. So, cool.
No, you're right. And when I send stuff off in November and it's Christmas stuff, and a lot of it goes to the US where I send a lot of my kits.
Yeah.
And I think, that might not arrive till December, and then you've not got long to make it. So I just be Christmas crafting into February.
So maybe it needs swapping around then, doesn't it? So that although I'm sure people don't want to see Christmas stuff in summer, but it kind of needs to go out, doesn't it? Yeah. It's difficult. It's a difficult one, Lottie, definitely.
I think people just save it up for next year if they need to, and then work on it.
A good point, goes in a bag as a UFO until next year, So you need to remind people then, don't you? Right, I know you all got your Christmas thing last year. Have you started it yet? How's it getting on?
Yeah, absolutely, Start Christmas posting in August so people go, oh, I've got that thing in the cupboard.
Yes. Fabulous. Right, so you're working on your collection, your next seasonal collection, and that's going to be a tartan peony. Have you been sharing any sneak peeks of that, or is that a secret until it comes out for the people who've bought those?
So I have been sharing quite a few pictures on my Instagram stories, and as a highlight of those on my page. So you can kind of see my progress. I've only just started the embroidery one, but the cross stitch and one of the blackwork ones is finished. I decided to do 2 blackwork ones, one in colour and one in black, because I couldn't decide. And I thought, I'll double the workload. It's fine. I've totally got time for that.
Oh, bless you.
But yes, no, you can see bits and pieces of it. Often I start with an idea, and I think, so this time it started with the cross stitch idea, which was a black outline of the peony with the tartan effect coming through the petals. And then I went, oh, okay, right, I need to play on that theme and work out what I'm doing for the other techniques. And sometimes, I didn't design Eric the Turtle until a month before he needed to be out, the embroidery one, because I didn't know what I wanted to do. I have to wait for the inspiration to hit me sometimes.
Well, that's the truth, isn't it? When it's anything to do with creativity, we may have a schedule, but sometimes we can't schedule our creativity to play ball when we need it to, can we?
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a real learning curve for me to work out if I'm feeling really inspired by design, if I'm hyper focused on it, to learn to actually lean into that while I can and work around it, because actually that's when I get my best work done. And there's no point putting it down and going off to do admin, because I won't do the admin well, and it'll only be sat there tomorrow and I'll still be going, but I need to do it. I won't sleep. I'll be thinking about what I'm going to do.
I can sense a lot of lessons learned here, but rapidly learned lessons as well. So that's always a thing about managing your creative time, and we'll pop back into that. So I think what I'd like to do now is to dive into that kind of small little line that I read out there, that in 2018, at just 19 years old, fresh out of sixth form, you decided you was going to start Purple Rose Embroidery, and have since then done like over 100 kits. So that's like amazing. So how did you first get interested in embroidery and textile art, Lottie? And then moving into, what was the story, because I'm sure there must be one, that at 19, fresh out of sixth form, you decided you was going to run this or start running this as a business, when a lot of people would like go off and, you know, go to university for a few years or do textiles or, you know, whatever it is. So I detect a story there, but let's start with what your initial interest in embroidery and textile art was, and then move into that massive decision to start running this as a business at that age.
Yeah, I think I've always been really creative, and I've always enjoyed crafting. But the one thing I don't enjoy is anything that's messy or sticky. So I knew that I didn't like painting and that kind of thing. Yeah. But embroidery is great because the threads don't leak if you don't screw the lid back on. You know, you can put it down and walk away, and your hands aren't sticky. It's fine. So I always knew I liked that.
Yeah.
And I guess I was sort of taught things from a young age, not very specifically, just sort of you come across cross stitch and that sort of thing at school when they do a workshop.
Yeah.
But it was really, I think I was in year 9 or something like that. And I had an operation that meant I wasn't in school for a year. And the teachers didn't send me any work. And I was sat there, and people bought me kits, and I took up beading and that sort of thing. And then I got back to school, did GCSE textiles, taught myself to hand embroider throughout that process, and then I was hooked, and that was it.
So year 9, what would you been about 14 or so there?
Oh,
I would say.
Yes, roughly that, yeah.
Felt that into it, yeah. So, all right, so to keep yourself occupied, you turned to, you know, craft and people giving you kits and all that kind of thing. So, right, so very much self-taught then, Lottie, really.
Yeah, I mean, you can probably tell from the way I talk as well. When I'm in a creative mood or I've got something going, I go at a million miles an hour. So I didn't enjoy sitting there with someone teaching me, because I've got that. I want to do the next bit. What's the next bit? Can I try the harder one?
Are you a fast learner? I
never saw myself as one until recently, but I think I pick up things, especially when they're grid or pattern based, very, very quickly. Right. They just make sense to me.
Yeah. No, I'm just in terms of, obviously we had a little chat before we started, and there's kind of things that you've done and have told me about. I think I said, wow, there's been a lot of lessons learned here. There's been a lot of fast lessons learned, actually, when I listen to what you've been doing and how you've hit a problem. Think, oh, right, okay, how am I going to sort that out? You seem to have moved on quickly, sorted out what it is, and off you go again. Whereas I've seen lots of people be kind of stuck for a long time over some of these things. So yes, just from what you've said, you definitely seem to be a very fast learner. So I could understand the frustration, especially of, you know, having to recover from something, and how frustrating that must have been to then go, yeah, I want the next thing.
Yeah, I can never let anything hang over me. So if I've got an idea, I have to get it down on paper, or I have to solve it. Or if I've got an email in my inbox that I need to do something about, I sit there thinking about it if I don't just get on with it. So I'm one of those. I have to get everything off my list, and then I'll sit down with my stitching and I'll relax. And then that's a good end to the day.
Right. So you try and get all of those kind of like annoyingly boring tasks out of the way, so that you can then give yourself a treat and then get back onto your stitching. You do it that way. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good way to be, definitely. So you have kind of taught yourself a variety of styles then. Was it cross stitch that got you started, would you say? You mentioned cross stitch.
I remember very vague memory of being taught basic cross stitch in primary school, but I really didn't pick that up again until last year.
Right.
I just sort of, I skimmed over it a bit for some reason, and then I came back to it later after I got into embroidery and then blackwork. Right. And then I've been doing those for several years. And then, last year or the year before, I think I picked up cross stitch again and thought, actually, you know, I could design these. I'll do these. That's great.
I love it. Right, yeah, because quite often people will start with a cross stitch, you know, kits. That's how people will often get into embroidery. I think I've described it before. It's like the gateway drug almost into embroidery and textile art is cross stitch. And some people love it and love it and love it, and then others think, you know, I want to kind of free myself out of the grid, as it were, and try other things. So it's always a good starting point. So you've actually come back into it and then seen it as an opportunity. So do you want to talk us through then the story of how Lottie at that age decided she was going to make this her business and her career.
Yeah, so I did GCSE textiles, as I mentioned, and I went on to study that at A-level, which was a bit odd because I was the only textiles student in the class and I didn't have a textiles teacher, but I was doing textiles.
Crikey, yeah.
But unfortunately, around then, my mental health wasn't great, and I ended up leaving school with depression before I finished my A-levels. I ended up sat around in the house, and everyone else was going off to uni and doing things. Dear. I had this new dog, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to stitch a portrait of him. I've got nothing else to do.
Yeah.
And I shared it on Instagram, and I had people saying, oh, you know, I'd really like a portrait of my cat or my dog or my whatever. And I did a couple of them. And then people were going, do you know, I want to stitch my dog. I want to stitch my cat. And I thought, but I can't make a kit for every single breed. So that was when I thought, well, do you know what? Kits is a good idea, but let me choose different animals that people aren't going to go, I want my animal. Because you can't go, I want my version of a fox. No, it's a fox, you know.
But yes, good point there, right.
Yeah, so that was when that started. And I'd always been told not to draw animals because if you get them wrong, then they look really weird. And actually, I found that I really liked it. So that was a new creative boost, and I started designing kits, and the animals have always been the best sellers. And it just took off from there.
Crikey, where do I start with all of this? Right, so you shared what you were doing, you were visible, you started going, look, I'm doing this, and you know, people crawl out the woodwork then, don't they? You know, I'm doing this thing. Oh, yeah, can I have one? Can I have one? Etc. So how long did it take you before you realised that you didn't want to be a pet portrait embroidery artist? Because, I mean, there are some fantastic people who do that. I mean, how long did you think about, well, no, this isn't for me?
I think it was, I mean, I probably only did 3 or 4 portraits before I decided it was not, it wasn't going to be the thing.
Yeah.
But no, I think I'm trying to remember the dates and I can't quite remember, but I think within a year I had moved on from deciding that I was going to do pet portraits and trying to get into that market, and I'd moved on, and I went to Kirstie Allsopp's Handmade fair in London.
Right.
That was one of the first big shows I did, and I think that was probably only about a year or 18 months into having the business, and by that point I'd fully pivoted and there was no pet portraits in sight.
Right, hang on, stop. So you weren't an attendee, you had a stall at Kirstie's Handmade thing?
Yes.
Oh. Crikey.
Yeah, I definitely jumped in with 2 feet.
You really did. Gosh. That honestly, that is absolutely astounding. That really is. So what was the story there? What made you think, I'm going to go and have a stall on Kirstie's thing? Just that?
I'm not sure it was anything in particular for that event. That was just the big, I mean, I've been to other events since.
Yeah.
But I think that was the first really big one that I did.
Yeah.
And I have a whole story on my blog about it. It didn't necessarily go to plan, and there were all sorts of reasons that it didn't. And it taught me a lot.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, I was sat there and my parents were very supportive of everything that I was doing. And they were saying, well, you know, you've got to actually try and make, you know, if you're going to make it work, you've got to reach people, you've got to find people. You can't just wait for them to come to you. So we thought, well, we'll see, you know, try events, we'll try social media, we'll try all of it, you know.
Right. So are your parents in any kind of creative business, can I ask?
Both of them are priests, actually, so not particularly creative.
Wow. That's very wise advice, though, because most parents are either going, oh, don't be so silly, go get a proper job. Or, you know, oh, no, you don't want to be doing art. Nobody will ever make any money out of art. Go and do, you know, whatever, engineering or something. Wow, yeah. Or, yes, they want you to succeed, but actually they haven't the faintest clue what it actually means to have a creative business, to try one, or any of the online stuff that goes with it.
I mean, I think they were always really supportive of the fact that they knew I had to do something creative. And when I did think I was going to uni before I ended up leaving school, I'd applied to the Royal School of Needlework. I thought, right, that's where I'm going to go.
Yeah.
And so they were fully behind the idea that I was always going to have that creative career, but they didn't realize that they might have to directly support me into it as much as they did. And it was wonderful.
Right. So, I mean, that's obviously made a massive difference to you at that age, deciding this is what I'm going to do. It almost seems like a family event, as it were.
Yeah, I mean, it was really odd because I was, as I say, I was 19 years old. I was quite young, and I was doing these events, and people, they were quite confused that I was so young, and very supportive, but also kind of looking at me thinking, well, that's a bit, that you don't see that every day.
No.
And, I was getting all the help that I could on the business side of things. I got support with starting up the business from the Chamber of Commerce, and I was talking to advisors about it. And at that point, it was so small that they were basically saying, well, this is good. You've got, you just need to keep going with it.
Yeah.
But it always felt really, I just I was sat there thinking, should I really be here? Am I really doing this? Is this where I just felt a bit silly all the time, but I didn't let that stop me. And I think that was a really important thing, is that even though I still feel silly half the time when I'm running the business, it worked. You just have to keep going.
Yeah. Wow. So, yeah, again, a common thing, and it's not just with artists, it's kind of a lot of us, a lot of the time, is this, imposter syndrome. Who the hell am I to be doing this? Why am I, who's going to listen to me? Who's going to buy my stuff? Oh, I'm rubbish. Oh, God. Even calling yourself an artist quite often is a big challenge for people. So, yeah, honestly, I am quite lost for words, really, as to the very rapid, you're a fast learner, all right, girl. The very rapid changes, and I think you've dived in with both feet, haven't you? Head first, hands first, feet first, the whole lot. You've thrown yourself into this. That's really amazing.
Yeah.
So I was going to say, right, so you'd gone, so it's a big thing, is Kirstie's, handmade events and all the rest of it. So you decided you was having a stall, and then you said you learned a lot of lessons. Would you like to share a couple of things that were lessons learned that you've now, you think, no, I ain't going to, that was a massive lesson, and therefore I'm going to do X, Y, and Z instead. Would you want to share a couple of those to us, with us, Lottie, please?
I think one of the things that I definitely learned is that in-person events do not suit me. I'm not, I probably sound like quite an outgoing person, but I'm very much masking. I like to just sit there on my own. I don't like being in front of people. I love meeting people and talking to them about embroidery. That's great, but it drains me. So I knew that online was what I wanted to be doing. And I'd set up the website specifically before that event, so that I had a website that people could visit to order afterwards if they wanted to. And I remember that not necessarily the event being so successful, but realizing, because it was in the autumn with that run up to Christmas, when actually people are actually buying this stuff. People that I don't think went to that event are buying this stuff. And I think that was one of the lessons I learned, was that it's worth trying that. What are you going to lose? Okay, you're going to lose a few months worth of a website fee, but that's not big in the grand scheme of things if it works. So and I think I learned a lot about just events in general and the management thereof and all that kind of thing. But it was a really important thing to have done to get to where I am now. And I've done events since. But I like them, but I prefer not to go to them if I can help it, if that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense. Yes. So you're coming across as quite an introvert. So although a social introvert, so yes, you can be very sociable and happy and chatting to people, but it is absolutely draining, because I'm very much like that, and I think a lot of creative people are. People confuse introversion with shyness. They are not the same thing at all. Utterly different. So, right. So do you now not do events,
or do you only do 2 or 3, or do you just think actually there's a better way I can put my effort into doing my online stuff and I don't need to bother with the event side of things?
So the last event I did was I did the Creative Craft Show at the NEC in 2019. So that was just before the world tried to end. And I hadn't gone back since, obviously, because it wasn't the same for a couple of years.
Yeah.
And then last year I did a couple of television appearances. But I don't seek that sort of stuff out because it's too much for me.
Oh, right. We'll have to go back into that as well then. Oh, I am so pleased I found you on Instagram. This is amazing, Lottie. Right. Okay. So you've not, as you say, the events kind of changed and stuff like that. We'll come back to the telly thing. So go on.
So yeah, generally I don't have any plans for events this year. I focus on my online stuff. I have obviously I have my subscriptions, and I'm always releasing new kits and designs, and then if I'm not releasing them as a kit or a pattern, often they're on my blog as a free thing, so that you'll find some of my old embroidery designs pop up there. And also some of the new crochet stuff I'm doing, because I don't necessarily put all of that in the shop at the moment. So and then I have YouTube, I do tutorials and all that kind of thing, and then Instagram is a whole job. Content creation to drive traffic to the website is a whole job. So no, I don't have time for events at the moment, and I quite like it that way, really.
Yeah, there's no need, is there, really, because you've got lots of other things on the go instead which suit you. And that's I think the thing as we work our businesses is we realize that there's no right or wrong way to do anything. There's no such thing as the embroidery business police. We are blessed with the fact that we can run our business how we want to suit our personality, our life, our family situation, whatever it is. We are the ones that are in control. And I think sometimes people forget that, actually.
Yeah, no, they do. And people, I mean, it's really weird. I've had people approaching me so many times on Instagram to say, how did you set up your business? What's your advice? And I go, I don't know. I just did things and they worked. There isn't a formula. I can't say to you, oh, if you invest in that particular thing, that will be the thing that makes it work, because you just have to work out what works for you and your business and your customers, because everyone's customers are different as well.
Yeah, right. So in terms of, you said you've had support from the business side of things. So, I mean, the stuff that you've got going, again, it's phenomenal, Lottie, as to where you've got to. It truly is phenomenal what you have achieved. And I'm not surprised people approach you to say, how did you do that? So what sort of support have you received?
Honestly, not a lot of concrete support. When I was first starting out, because I had absolutely no idea, and none of my family members run their own businesses, they didn't have any advice to give me. And someone had recommended that I get in touch with the Chamber of Commerce, because they support young businesses, not as in young people, but as in businesses that are starting out.
Startups,
And I went to a couple of workshop events, and really they were based around business models that would work for anything else. But they just didn't work for embroidery, especially because at that point I was still doing the pet portraits. If I'd been doing the kits at that point, maybe the advice might have fit more with what I needed to be doing, but it really didn't. So I kind of walked out of it and went, okay, well, that was interesting, but actually I'm going to do it differently, because that's not going to work for me at all. And there wasn't anyone that could have told me what to do. So I had very supportive family members who were willing to, let me try things and that kind of thing. But I just had to work it out for myself, really.
Wow. Yeah. And you did hit the nail on the head there in terms of a lot of the let's call it traditional, within quotes, even the business advice, the sort of advice that you would often get from, and this is not being intended to be derogatory, it's just I've seen it as well, is that the kind of advice that you'll get from, say, the local authority and, the business teams and those kind of things are often aimed at larger businesses with a more concrete thing. They may be running a shop, a real shop, or they're a business that's providing a specific service or whatever. And the running a creative business around selling a kind of handmade business and how you can leverage all of those things. It is a totally different ball game, because quite often the thing that you're making can take forever, which hand embroidery is a relatively slow process, of course. Yeah. And we are discouraged at that. I mean, it seemed to me, it was like, oh, well, that doesn't seem to work. Oh, well, I'll go and try something else.
I think it was all happening at the same time that I was realising that pet portraits weren't the way to go.
Right, yeah.
So I already was thinking to myself, I've got to change this up somehow. I'm going to focus on kits and I'm going to see what happens there. So I came away not really having felt that they didn't try and help.
Yeah.
But just feeling that, it didn't quite fit.
It didn't fit with what you were doing. Yeah.
Yeah. Tried and tested structures for other businesses that you can kind of copy and paste, but you can't really do that when it's a handmade product in the same way. And it's a weird thing, because at the start I was definitely making handmade products. And now I put all my kits together by hand. They're made to order, but I don't look at them and go, yeah, that's handmade. And it's weird, because actually it kind of is, but it's also a kit. So I kind of fall into a weird in between kind of thing as a business at the moment. I'm never sure whether to put artist on my tax return or business owner. It's a bit weird.
Well, you've sensibly leveraged and productized your designs. That's what you've done. So you are making a business out of your creativity. And again, that is a massive achievement. That is a massive achievement for, this makes me sound like an old bag, but I don't mean to be. It is a massive achievement what you've done in a short period of time. To go through these lessons and think, do you know what? Yeah, kits it would be a really great way to go.
I was going to say 5 years is how long I've been doing this now in April. And that sounds like a really long time when you're sat in the front of it before you've done it. But when you've done it, you look back and you go, well, I can't remember anything else. But also, I don't feel like I've sat here forever doing it. I feel like it's always new. I've never felt I've stagnated and just sat there and not had anything happen. It really... It is a long time, but it's not at all. And there's always time to try and do something about it if you want to do something.
Yeah, if you want to. Yeah, that's great. So you've kind of touched here, and there's a few other things I want to come back to. But let's just look at your techniques. So obviously you'd started off thinking, pet portraits. Then you moved into other things, and then you've listed off even now your kits. You're doing them as a collection and you're making them available. So you're leveraging, I love that word, leveraging one design and getting 3 designs out of it, really, and then making it, marketing them as a collection, which is also a really wise thing. So in terms of the techniques, blackwork, for example, you mentioned about patterns. Yeah, talk us through that a bit, how you got into blackwork then, because that's how I spotted you, was your rainbow coloured blackwork. That's it. That's how I spotted you first of all on Instagram. Yeah,
that's one of my favourites. That was when I was designing blackwork. I often start with just a grid in front of me and I doodle shapes and repeating patterns, because that's all it is. It's just a grid of holes, and then you just do the thread and repeating patterns. That's all. I thought to myself, I really want colour on this. Yeah. And then I went, do you know what I could do? I could make it change colour. 32 colours, that's what I need. And that's how many colours are in that piece. So 32 all the way down the piece, the same pattern all the way through. I'm going to try it. And I thought, do you know what? This is silly. No one's going to be interested. And then they were. And then I did 3 versions with 3 different patterns. And this is just how my brain works and how my creativity works, you see. Yeah. And then I suddenly had 3 10-inch hoops with this blackwork with 32 colours. And I stitch on 20 count Ada because I like to get as much detail in as possible. And that's just a ridiculous amount of stitching.
Is that what I spotted not so long back? We had that conversation about you can't have any too many rainbow hoops or something. I remember we did have a conversation about it on Insta.
Yeah, no, I love anything that's grid based or repeating, because what I say to people, and they don't believe me till they try blackwork, is if you're filling an area with a pattern, once you've got that repeat and you've learned that repeat, you don't have to look at the pattern and they go, yeah, of course you do. No, you don't. Once you know that little flower motif just repeats itself every however many holes, you just keep that. You don't have to look at the pattern. I spend maybe, I don't know, 5% of the time when I'm working on a blackwork piece actually looking at a pattern grid. The rest of it, I'm just looking at the work and watching the telly. It's great.
So how did you discover blackwork? It was a thing, because it's quite it's obviously a very, very traditional stitch and approach, and people are adapting it in quite a modern way. Like Jen Goodwin, I always think she's like the queen of blackwork, and how she,
absolutely.
She's a previous guest from many years ago now, but I've always admired Jen's blackwork, how she has the shading of photographs, and she's done a lot of things. But being again back to somebody, just having left school and hasn't done a lot of formal work, how did you discover blackwork was even a thing?
I remember having a kit that I think my grandparents gave me for Christmas one year, and I think it must have been before I left sixth form.
Yeah.
And I did the kit within a weekend, and I looked at it and I went, that was fun, but I can do more with that. And then it just one morning I got up and I decided, right, well, I've got a grid of paper in front of me. I bet I could design something. And I can't remember what my first one was. I was trying to remember the other day, but I can't remember. It feels like so long ago.
So long ago, yeah. Well, I'm not surprised if you crammed that much in. Crikey.
Yeah, but no, I do a very different style to more traditional blackwork, where you've got the shading in traditional blackwork, whereas my style is very much more. I start with an outline and then I fill it with different patterns to create different shades, rather than shading within the same pattern. And I think that's a more accessible technique for some people to pick up the way that I do it.
Yeah, for sure.
But then obviously it's very different to how you do it traditionally. But that's okay, because it works and it's fun, and that's the main thing, really.
Yeah, and I think you've hit the nail on the head there with it in terms of accessibility. So yeah, you look at, say, those rainbow hoops, because we were just talking about the visual power is in the range of colours in there. It is, they just like hit you in the eyeballs, don't they? And you think, oh, wow.
Yeah.
And then I guess it'd be like, oh God, there'd be a lot of people thinking, I could never do any of that. Or look at it, it's really complicated. But as you say, it's a pattern and it repeats, and a pattern is made up of some lines in a same little angle. And I guess you can boil it down to that one motif. As you say, once you've learned that
you really can.
central motif, then, off you go, repeating it. Yeah. And so I think watching your stuff, you have made it accessible probably to I sound like an old bag, to like a new generation of people who didn't even know what blackwork was a thing.
Yeah.
Reminds me of colouring books, Zentangle. You know what I mean? Where you kind of doodle and fill patterns. Yeah, it's like that.
It really is. I remember doing some sort of Zentangle-esque stuff when I was in sixth form doing textiles.
Yeah.
And I always liked the fact that it was repeating patterns.
Yeah.
And my art teachers, they were wonderful. They were very much more sort of, they like different fabrics and different textures and different marks and different all of that.
Yeah.
And of course, I've discovered after I left school that my brain doesn't work like that. My brain wants a grid and it wants the same thing every time.
Right.
And once I worked that out, I found comfort in that. And actually, it's really therapeutic to sit there and stitch the same. It sounds really boring, but it's really therapeutic to stitch the same thing over and over again and know that that's what you need to do.
Right. Yeah. So again, you found the thing that you love to do, and you're now using that in all sorts of different ways and inspiring others to have a go as well. So I really love that. And then your other, some of the other images that you've shared, you've been having a go in different styles as well, haven't we? So we've got the bee and the tufty Highland, the shaggy Highland cow. So you're not just doing one thing, are you? That's it, Hamish. You're trying all sorts of different techniques as well, which is brilliant.
Yeah, I'm never the sort of person that can stick to one thing. So I love blackwork and I will always come back to it. Yeah. But sometimes I just want something else.
Yeah.
So having that balance of different techniques is really useful to me. And I've looked at these thread painting designs and thought, I really want to try that. And all it took was for me, I think the bumblebee was probably the first thread painting design that I made. And I just looked at a bumblebee and I went, right, I'm sure I can do something with this. And the bumblebee is the most popular thread painting design that I think I will ever design. And it was the first one. And I don't think I'll ever top it. Because there's just something about it. It's small. People can do it. And I say to them, you can do it. It's only 3 inches.
It's doable.
Right? You can do it. I can do it in about 2 hours. Right. You can do it in a weekend. You'll be fine. Yeah, and it's really fun. And it's just a difference. It's more free. There's obviously not the regimented, you have to stitch this there and that there.
Yeah.
But there is order to it. There's a thing you can follow, but it's always going to turn out looking a bit like what your work looks like.
Yeah.
Because there's always going to be your own little bits that, you might do it in a slightly different way and not realize it. Yeah. And it will look like your work. And that's quite nice as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So you were doing your kits. Then what brought you on to your seasonal collections and your seasonal boxes? What was the evolution there?
Oh, right. So I started doing subscriptions back in, I think it was 2018. I think that's right. I think I did the Handmade fair in the autumn. And then in the January, I set up a Patreon and I did subscriptions through there and I did monthly.
Right.
And that's probably why I have so many designs because you're
on the content mill then, weren't you?
Yeah, absolutely. Every month there was a new design coming out and it was wonderful but exhausting at the same time.
Yeah.
And then I was releasing these big designs around the side. So the rainbow and Humphrey is the blackwork whale as well. They didn't fit into the box because you couldn't stitch them in a month. So I released those as extra things that I released, and it was just never ending.
It's starting to be a recipe for insanity, that, Lottie.
Yeah. There was always a lot. There was a lot that I was doing, and having that subscription was really valuable.
Yeah.
But I knew it had to change. There were various things with the way that Patreon worked that I didn't like as much.
Yeah.
And I knew that I wanted to change things up and do things differently. So I then started running the subscriptions through my website. And at the point I knew I wanted to do that, I looked at the Patreon exit surveys and people were saying, I like the blackwork, but I don't want to do the thread painting. I'll come back for the blackwork when that's available again. And then other people were saying, I only like the embroidery. I don't really like the blackwork. And I thought, well, I'll separate them out. I'll do both.
Yeah.
And then I thought, 3 is a good number. I'll throw in cross stitch as well because I'm getting back into that. Yeah. So that was how I ended up with this collections every season that are trios of the same theme but slightly different designs.
Which is really wise and really clever because then it's visually appealing and you're appealing to a wider audience. You're leveraging those designs.
It's really fun creatively as well because I sit there and I design something and I think, oh, that's great, and then someone will say to me, oh, it would look great in embroidery, and I think, well, yeah, it would, but I can't do it in everything, but now I can. And it's really freeing to look at a design and go, if I tweak that ever so slightly, that will be a really nice blackwork. And if I do it slightly like that, that's a good cross stitch. And then it's really nice to be able to play on the theme and not just narrow myself down to one option for each design that I want to do.
And in terms of the designing, again, I spotted you the other day showing, it was a little reel or something of using, must be an iPad or something you were using to design the blackwork. And I thought, I think I even said, wow, that's a really great piece of software you've got there. 'Cause you know me, I love software and tech and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, that's because I'd often wondered for things like blackwork, because the effect is in the pattern repetition, but it's slow to experiment, I should imagine. So that sounds like a really great discovery then, Lottie, using the iPad to design your blackwork. Does it work for the other patterns as well?
Yeah, I use the iPad for everything. It was one of the best investments I made because, I mean, I can't speak to other drawing tablets that I'm sure are available. But it is a very good piece of software with the Apple Pencil, and you can work in layers, which is once I realized that was a thing, that was amazing, because I could draw something out roughly and then go over it, and it was brilliant. I didn't have to rub things out all the time.
Lock in the layers. Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah, no, it was great. And so I've been looking for ages, and honestly, I've been doing this for about 5 years now, and I've been looking for the past 5 years for a good piece of blackwork software. And the one that I am using at the moment, it's a cross stitch software, but it works for blackwork as well as any that I have found.
Right.
Especially when you're working on a tablet, and it is great. You can copy and paste the motif once you've got it and tessellate it out, and then you've got everything you need. It doesn't have layers though, which is irritating, but it has everything else. So I'm living with it for now, but I'm always on the hunt for the best piece of software to design things, because it really does make a difference.
Well, that I'll use that overworked game changer, but I'm sure it damn well is when it comes to something pattern repetitions like that. Yeah, superb. Right, so lots of techniques. Why are you sneaking crochet in here? Because I mean, don't you have enough to do already? she says.
Yeah, you think so?
That's repeating patterns as well, isn't it?
I discovered that C2C crochet, so corner to corner crochet, is done on a grid-based system. And that was it. Once I knew it was a grid.
It's a repeating pattern, isn't it? A lot of crochet as well.
It's a repeating pattern. And once I know that things are based in grids, then suddenly I go, oh, I can do that.
Yeah.
I sat down after work on Monday and I went, I wonder how you do colourwork knitting. Looked it up. And by yesterday morning, I had drawn up a pattern repeat for colourwork knitting with about 6 different colours in it. And now I know it's a grid. That's it. That's a new obsession. I can't be helped.
Oh, this is astounding. Absolutely. I love this. Right. So I quite often talk about high points. And when we were talking beforehand, you were going, oh, I can't think of anything. Right. So then we sneaked in Kirstie's Handmade Fair was your first fair you did. And then we dropped in TV. So come on then, tell me about TV, because surely that's got to be a high point at this point.
Yeah, I don't know. It was an experience. I got approached by... Now, they were called something else when they approached me. I can't remember what. I think they were called the Craft Store TV, and they had been Hochanda, and now they're Creative Craft or something.
Right. That lot, yeah. Mm-hmm.
But I worked. I did a couple of shows with them, and the first one was fantastic. The second one, not so much. And it was a different style of how you had to dispatch things and all of that.
Yeah.
Really. A really interesting experience, and it was fun, but it was a lot for me to do, and there was a lot of pressure on having that hour being really important, and then you get home and then suddenly you've got 2 days worth of, you've got to get all these orders out in 2 days, and you can't sit around, you have to do it. And there's quite a lot of stress involved. I think that style of selling probably works a lot better for someone who isn't a one-woman show. But again, you learn these things.
Absolutely. There's a local friend of mine used to do quite a few of those with stamping, paper stamping and things like that. And she latterly she changed her business and doesn't do that sort of thing anymore. But she mentioned that things had changed quite a bit, and the pressure of having to fit in with their kind of terms and conditions and delivery slots, etc. So I can understand that. But another brilliant experience for you to then again decide, for me, this is not what I want to do. That's just amazing, that is. So while we're talking about high points, is there anything that does spring to mind, or something that you think, I really love that aspect of what I've achieved so far?
So I think the thing for me that I really enjoy is when I open up my phone and I open up Instagram or TikTok or whatever it is, and I see a message and someone has sent me a photo and they have stitched one of my designs and they say, I had never tried this before and I was a beginner. And I look at the design they've done, I think that's one of the ones that, it would be an advanced design. And there's a very good reason I don't label them as such on my website. I say things like suitable for those with a determination to learn, because that's what it is. You don't have to have done it before.
I love it.
You just have to want to do it.
Yeah. Wow.
And that's the high point for me, is seeing that people can do these things, that they just needed permission to try and do it. And then they grab it and they go, oh yeah, I can do that. Look, I've made it.
Yeah. And wow. And that is such a lovely attitude as well, because again, with a lot of the designs that you're doing, people sometimes say, oh, I can't sew or I can't draw. Yeah, but you can put a needle in and out. It can come up and it can go down, and there's one stitch and we can do it again. And yeah, that is a really refreshing attitude as well. But yeah, how satisfying for you. As you say, I can understand why that's really sticks in your mind. How satisfying that you have helped somebody else feel inspired to give it a go without that label of advanced or beginner or whatever. Because somebody mentioned a phrase to me. How did they put it? Unencumbered as I was with prior knowledge, I think was what somebody was trying to say. Was they weren't bogged down with the should tos and should haves and this is how you do it and you can't do that and you have to do it this way. This person had just gone off and tried this thing exactly like you have, without really knowing a lot of the academia behind it, the theory, the hundreds of years of this, that, and the other. You've just gone, well, do you know what? I'm going to give it a go. And you've passed that attitude on in your kits so that people can also go, well, do you know what? I'm going to give that a go. They're not scared off by, advanced or whatever. So
no, exactly. I think it's so important creatively. I was always the person that walked into the craft store and went, I want that really complicated one. and I'd be told, but are you going to finish it? I think, well, why should there be an emphasis on, can you finish it? Can you complete it? Isn't the whole point of creativity that you're trying and you're learning something and you're having fun with it? If you're not having fun, then there's no point in doing it. And if you think that big design that you've never tried is going to be fun, then try it. What if it is fun?
Yeah, exactly. What if it is? What if it turns out really fabulous and you really love it? And what if you don't? Well, never mind. You can use the threads for something else. You can turn the design round and sew on the back, or no
one's going to come around to your house and say, why haven't you finished that one?
Oh, dear me. I really love that attitude. Keeping an eye on time here. We could be at it all week here. So there's a couple of things that I want to sneak in, and have I come back to everything I was going to? The design, the tablet, TV. I think I have. So there's kind of two questions that I was wondering, what if they would come up in our conversation. And listeners will know that sometimes we have a bit of a laugh about UFOs and finishing unfinished objects and all the rest of it. And then I'm thinking to myself, well, you're only in your early 20s. You can't possibly have loads of unfinished things, especially not at the rate that you go out. So is there any aspect of unfinished objects, Lottie, that you have, or are you good and get everything? Do you finish everything off? It sounds like you do. Do you have any UFOs?
No, I'm terrible. The amount of projects I start that I'm really inspired by, and then I just put them down and I never pick them back up again. I mean, I've got dozens of stuff, things that I've never finished, and I don't think I ever will. Because if I feel like I want to try something, I go and try it, and then I don't necessarily finish it, but that's okay because I don't have to finish it if I don't want to.
It was something. It's a way of you trying a new thing, and that's a refreshing, way to look at things rather than beating yourself up like, I've got all these things unfinished. Well, that's because you were trying something out and thought, well, actually, no, that's maybe not going to work out, or I'm bored with it, or whatever. So, right. Yeah. Oh yeah, I love that attitude to UFOs. So I think we can all reimagine that term now, can't we? And it's things that you tried and decided you weren't going to carry on with. And did you say to me that you inherit you get other people's UFOs?
I have done quite a bit in the past, especially when I was starting out. People would say to me, oh, I inherited all of this stuff from my mum or my aunt or whatever, and she's never going to finish them. Do you want them? And I'd sort of, well, I mean, they really wanted to give them to me. So I say, yeah, that's fine. But I'm thinking, what am I going to do with all of these?
Things? So have you finished any of those off? Or are they like piled up in the corner somewhere as well then? Inherited UFOs?
I think they probably got cannibalized for threads. And then after that, they probably got left in the pile because I don't like to throw them out just in case. But at some point I'll have to.
Yeah, you'll run out of space, won't you?
Yeah.
And we've mentioned a bit about creative time, and you were saying that, you know, you like to get rid of the kind of admin-y things. So how do you manage your creative time, Lottie? Because you're prolific in your designs, you've created, you know, different items in your business, you've got the website, you do blogging, you've got all these social media things. So how on earth do you manage your creative time to get all of that done and still be like really joyful and excited about your business? What's the secret there then, Lottie?
So I don't know if it's any big secret, but I try and get the jobs I don't like out the way first.
Yeah.
So on a Monday and Tuesday, I sit there and I do all the admin and I answer all the emails and I just try and work out what I'm doing for the week. Yeah. And then by the time I get to Wednesday, Thursday, I just get up in the morning and think, right, I'm going to get a cup of tea, I'm going to get a blanket, and I'm going to get the telly and I'm going to sit there with my stitching project and I'm just going to work on them. And the only problem arises when because I do a lot of content creation, obviously, for Instagram and YouTube and that kind of thing. The only problem arises when I go, I really need to film that bit, so I can't work on that one. And then I have to find something else to work on because the light's gone and I can't film today. And that's the only bit that gets in the way of my creative flow, really. But yeah, I try and get the admin out the way and then I can just sit down and relax and then that's fine.
So when you're doing your, you know, 'cause as you say, I've spotted reels and all your content and stuff like that. So is that done on Mondays and Tuesdays? Is that like an admin task, or is that done whilst you're doing your stitching? Or how do you manage to actually say, obviously, sometimes you don't want to be stopping and starting either. I've got to film now. You know, how do you manage that side of it then, Lottie?
Do you know, it depends. Sometimes if it's something that I have to do so that I can progress with the project and there's enough natural light that I can film in that day, I'll just get up and I've got a filming setup which is very just stick the camera there and you just go for it. Which is really great. But often it isn't the case that I can do that because if I'm sat there at 4 p.m. and it's the winter, I can't film. It's too dark, so I have to put it down and come back to it.
Right.
But it depends how inspired I am by the piece at that time and whether I want to move and actually go and film something or whether I leave it. But I currently have a pile of projects sat next to me that the final bit of them needs to be filmed.
Right.
And I just haven't got round to it yet, and I probably won't for a while.
So it doesn't count as a Monday and Tuesday admin task then, because otherwise you'd be doing it on Monday.
It does at that point.
Yeah,
it does at the point where I've done all the other stitching associated with that project. But if I want to move on to the next stage of a project, then I'll get it out the way on Wednesday or Thursday.
Right. And do you have like a little area with a stand already set up? Do you just use your phone?
So I tend to use my iPad because then I edit on it and post on it as well. So then it's all on the same device.
Yeah.
And my partner set up for me a shelf above a desk, and the iPad slots onto the shelf, and then the shelf can go up and down depending on whether I need a close angle or a wide angle. And it's right next to a full length window and a skylight. So I just go and I sit there and I put the iPad there, and then I'm ready to go on the desk with all my embroidery stuff, and it's really, really good.
Yeah, so that's what I was getting at. To regularly film, if you have an area like that that's all organised and ready to go, and because you're using natural light, you need to get it done in the morning or whenever, it makes it doable. Whereas if you're constantly going, oh God, how the hell am I going to film this? Oh, I've got to get this out now. Oh, where's that tripod? Oh, my kids have nicked it, or whatever. It just puts another barrier. So yeah, when you're organised and streamlined for something like that, then you do it, don't you? It makes it, you've taken those barriers away.
Yeah, it took me a long time. I only really got it set up last year, but it's been so much better since I did.
Yeah, brilliant. So, wow. creative time. It's just like, crikey. So as we kind of wrap up here, Lottie, as I say, otherwise we really seriously could be talking for hours and hours. This is absolutely fascinating. So just, as a way to wrap up, future plans, what I know you said you're working on your next seasonal box, but in the wider scheme of things, have you got anything that you want to share with us that's kind of mulling away in the background of where you think you might want to go next?
I mean, I've always had a pie in the sky idea that I'd like to write a book someday, but I think that will probably be a few years down the line. But yeah, no, I'm just going to keep going with my collections for a bit, and hopefully things will settle a bit, because as you've mentioned, things have been quite hectic the last 5 years. So yeah, getting things to a nice level where they're, I know what's going on all the time is kind of where I'm at the moment.
Fantastic. And that, again, is a big achievement to get to that point where it's rinse and repeat. Always sounds a bit trite, but really for our sanity and everything else, that really is a great place to be, particularly when you are talking about creating your content and your marketing and all of that. Then we don't want to be using our brain cells up all the time on just reinventing the same old stuff. It's like, how am I going to do this? Sort it out and then make it easy to do. And obviously you're on that journey at the moment, aren't you? I think, to make things faster and easier for yourself. Brilliant. Oh, Lottie, wow. I am really, really, really chuffed, as we say here in Yorkshire, that I spotted your rainbow-coloured blackwork and thought, I haven't spoke to anyone about blackwork for a while. And here we are, this Pandora's box of all this wonderful stuff has come pouring out. Oh, wow. I really do applaud your energy, your effort, your willingness to just dive in. And, I think we're all sitting here going, wow, please be very aware of what an amazing achievement you've achieved. Rubbish choice of words there, but you know what I'm saying. It's, it really is been an absolute delight to hear about what you've achieved. And I, for one, I'll be rooting away in the background. Go, yay, Lottie, well done.
Oh, thank you. No, it's been lovely to come on and just, I mean, I don't think I remember all of the bits until someone asks me about them, and I go, oh yeah, that's that happened. So it's been really nice.
Yeah, I have that. I was putting together a video for a presentation I was giving a couple of weeks ago, and apart from I was having to dredge back for 30 odd years, thinking, actually I've made sense of my story now. But so yeah, it's quite difficult sometimes to do that, especially when it's spread over a long period of time. But you've crammed so much in, so equally, there's a lot to think about as well, and so much to look forward to, Lottie, I'm sure. So I think we're all here rooting for you and cheering you on. So thank you so much.
Thank you
for sharing such an amazing story with us, Lottie. Thank you. If you enjoyed this episode and want to hear more, then please join the Stitchery Stories fan club so you can get an email when a new episode is released. It's a quick and easy way of listening and of keeping up with any news and information around this podcast. Please visit stitcherystories.com. Of course, you can listen to Stitchery Stories on plenty of podcast apps at Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and plenty more besides. You can also ask your smart speaker to play Stitchery Stories podcast too. But wherever you listen, why not leave us a rating and a review to encourage other people to listen too? I very much appreciate you taking the time to do that for me. So that is the end of our Stitchery story for today. Keep stitching, keep smiling, and keep creating your very own Stitchery stories.